Hello, do you know this young man right here? Five, four, three, two, one. This is a young picture of Malcolm X. Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little on May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. His early years were shaped by the harsh realities of racism, violence. His father, Earl Little, was a black nationalist and an outspoken supporter of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Involvement Association. Sadly, Earl Little was murdered when Malcolm was just 6 years old, and that had a lasting effect on his life. Raised in poverty, Malcolm's family faced constant harassment and threats from white supremacists. His mother, Louise Little, struggled to raise her children in the face of the institutional racism. At a young age, Malcolm experienced deep trauma from the brutalities of the world around him. As a teenager, Malcolm turned to the life of crime. He became involved in petty theft, drug dealing, and robbery. He eventually moved to Boston and later New York City, where he gained a reputation as a hustler, living in the world of gambling, drugs, and street life. His criminal activities eventually led to his arrest in 1946, when he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for burglary. It was in prison that Malcolm began his transformation. During his incarceration, he dedicated himself to self-education. He was determined to turn his life around. He taught himself to read and develop a deep understanding of history and philosophy and politics. He even began to study the teachings of the Nation of Islam, a religious movement founded by Elijah Muhammad that advocated for black self-determination and separation from white society. Malcolm's conversion to the Nation of Islam in 1948 was the beginning of the dramatic shift in his life. He rejected the name Little, which he considered a slave name, and adopted the surname X to symbolize the loss of his African heritage. The X represented an unknown ancestral name, a mark of his rejection of the oppressive legacy of slavery. Upon his release from prison in 1952, Malcolm X became a prominent spokesperson for the Nation of Islam. He quickly gained national attention for his powerful oratory skills and uncompromising stance on racial justice. He argued that African Americans should embrace their black identity, reject the oppressive systems in place, and take pride in their culture. Malcolm was known for his bold, fearless rhetoric. He rejected the nonviolence advocated by leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. Instead, he preached a philosophy of self-defense by any means necessary. This message resonated deeply with many African Americans who were frustrated with the slow pace of change and the pervasive violence they faced in their communities. In 1964, Malcolm X made a pilgrimage to Mecca, a holy city in Islam. This experience was transformative. While in Mecca, he encountered Muslims from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, which led him to consider his previously separatist views. He saw white people practicing Islam as equals, and this helped him realize that the problem was not white people themselves, but the racist systems of oppression they perpetuated. Malcolm X returned from Mecca with a broader, more inclusive perspective. He publicly rejected the Nation of Islam's teachings, distancing himself from Elijah Muhammad. He also began advocating for the united struggle for civil rights that included all races, while still emphasizing black empowerment. This shift culminated in the creation of his own organization, the Organization of Afro-American Unity, modeled after the Organization of African Unity, which aimed to address global struggles for freedom and equality. Malcolm X's views evolved. His focus on black pride, self-determination, and empowerment remained central. His ideas greatly influenced the Black Power movement, which gained momentum in the mid-1960s. The Black Power movement championed many figures like Stokely Carmichael and the Black Panther Party, drew heavily on Malcolm's teachings about self-defense, the rejection of white supremacy, and the importance of Black identity. Malcolm was a family man. Together with his wife, Betty Shabazz, they had 6 children, all daughters. Malcolm X's call for racial justice, economic equality, and a global understanding of oppression resonated across the United States and around the world. His speeches, like the famous Ballot or the Bullet speech in 1964, demanded political participation and action in the face of racial injustice. He argued that African Americans should not only fight for civil rights, but also demand control over their economic and political destiny. Sadly, Malcolm X's life was cut short on February 21st, 1965, just a year after his pilgrimage to Mecca. Malcolm X was assassinated while speaking at a ballroom in New York City. He was shot by 3 gunmen, allegedly members of the Nation of Islam. Despite his tragic and untimely death, Malcolm X's legacy endures. His life symbolizes the power of transformation. From his early struggles to his rise as one of the most important figures in the civil rights movement, Malcolm X's journey reminds us that change is possible, no matter the obstacles. His story is a powerful reminder that it's never too late to fight for what's right, and that the pursuit of justice is a lifelong endeavor.